How we doing, seventh grade? I hope we're doing okay. All right. I hope you're staying inside still. I hope you're staying healthy. Okay. Make sure you keep washing your hands. And if you go outside, make sure you're wearing a face mask. Okay. It's really, really important that we keep following these procedures because Ohio is doing such a good job already. We are starting to flatten this exponential curve, more of what you'll learn next year. Okay. But if you are going outside, wear a mask, make sure you wash your hands because who knows? We're slowly starting to open up businesses again. At least we will be on in May. Okay. Maybe I'll get to see you before the school year is even over. Who knows? I know that some of you like that. Others might want to stay at home and sleep. It is what it is. But we'll figure it out. Anyways, back to our video. Okay, it is our third week of online schooling. And let me just say, you all are really doing a nice job. Okay, y'all are killing it, turning things in. You're doing a really good job of letting me know when you have questions. And you're also doing a really good job of just like handling this whole situation. So kudos to you. Shout out to you guys. Okay. In this third week, we're going to be talking about how do we find percentages. Okay. So it's going to be 36 is per what percent of what number, something like that. Okay. Or what is 25% of 73, other things like that. Okay. But this is the foundational lesson right now in order for us to do what we're doing next week, which is all going to be about percent off, markup, marks down, shopping, things like that. Okay. So without further ado, here's the video. Today, we're going to be talking about finding percents. Now, this is something that you could have a little bit of exposure to, which is great because we're going to be doing it this week and next week. Next week, we're going to be talking a lot more about percent off, markup, markdown, things like that. Things that you will see all the time in the real world. But let's worry about finding percentages right now. I wanted to go back to what we talked about in the beginning of the year, where we said that a percent literally means per 100. So I can say 28% is the same thing as 28 per 100. Now I know when you see the word per, you probably think of a couple different things. For example, like one of them is miles per hour. That miles per hour or something per 100 is actually a rate. And remember, I can write rates as fractions. So I can take 28% or 28 per 100 and make it 28 over 100. Okay? That was just really important for us to remember as we move on. So there are two ways that we're going to talk about in this video that we can work with percentages. The first way is going to be using proportions like we did last week. And then the second way is going to be doing decimal multiplication. So let's look at an example through proportions. So I took this example. Sorry, it's going to be okay. But they are trying to find 30% of 50 in this case. So they want to know what number is 30% of 50. So the first thing that they had to do was they had to write a proportion. They had to write two fractions that were set equal to each other. Their next step was they had to cross multiply. So they did 30 times 50 and 100 times n, and they set them equal to each other. They actually did the multiplication. So they found that 30 times 50 gives them 1,500, and 100 times n gives them 100n. The next thing they had to do is they had to divide each side by 100 in order to isolate or get by itself the variable. So they wanted to get the variable by itself. So they divided by 100, which cancels out those n's, and 1,500 divided by 15 or divided by 100 gives them 15. So they know that 30% of 50 is 15. Let's try our own example. I want to know, what is 35% of 60? Well, if I'm using proportions, I just have to set them up as fractions as they are equal to each other. So I have 35 over 100 equals x over 60. I have proportions. They're two fractions that are set equal to each other. And now I need to solve them just like I did last week. So I need to cross multiply. So I have 35 times 60 equals 100 times x. I know that 35 times 60 is 2,100, and that equals 100x. Sorry, that looks like 180x. Let's change that. 100. Now my next step is I need to divide both sides by 100, or I need to divide them by whatever is attached to my x. Okay, so now these 100s cancel out, and 2100 divided by 100 actually just gives me 21. So I know that 35% of 60, oops, that looks like a bad 60, of 60 is 21. All right, let's move on. I thought it was really important for this next part when it comes into decimal multiplication of knowing how can I make a percent into a fraction or into a decimal. In this case, if I have a percent, the only thing that I have to do is I have to take that percentage and divide it by 100 in order to get my new fraction and or decimal. So if I did 50%, I could do 50% divided by 100, and that would give me 0.5. If I want to take that decimal or a fraction and turn it into a percentage, all I would have to do is multiply by 100 in order to get it back into a percentage. Okay, but let's look at some steps of how I can multiply by a decimal with percentages. So to find the percentage of a given amount using decimals, the first thing that I have to do is I need to divide the percentage by 100 to make it a decimal. Or I can move the decimal 2 places to the left. I then need to multiply this decimal times the given amount, and then I do not put a percentage sign on the answer. Okay, and they also have some nice steps here if you want to try to do this on a calculator. But let's go back to my original question. Okay, what is 35% of 60? Well, what I need to do first is I actually need to do 35 divided by 100. And that is actually going to give me 0.35. So now all I have to do is do 0.35 times 60, and that is going to give me 21. So I know that 35% of 60 is 21. So these are two separate approaches in order to try to do the same thing in order to find a percentage. Okay, now this next part is for you. I need you to write a comment on this video saying whether or not you understand or writing down what questions you have, and then you can go ahead